Hey there, so today I'm going to show you how to create a flayed finger effect. If you don't know what flaying is, it's actually the removal of skin, primarily used as a form of torture or slow torture. It's pretty disgusting, but it makes a really awesome effect. Hopefully you get something from this and enjoy. So what you'll need to create this flayed finger is some form of anatomical reference. What you're looking for in particular is what lies beneath the skin inside the index finger. You need some modeling wax, and if you don't have this, you can just use some colored plasticine or something to sculpt with. You'll need some regular nose and scar wax, fake blood, 99% isopropyl alcohol plus alcohol palettes, and if you don't have these, you can just use cream-based makeup, pair of scissors, a white eyeliner pencil or something to mark a line on your skin, a mixture of brushes, some red yarn here just to make some capillaries, a mixture of sculpting tools, a clear sealer. This is just a clear gloss sealer, and if you don't have this, you can use clear nail polish. We won't be using this on the skin, we'll be using it on the prosthetic, so that's perfectly safe. Also some spirit gum, petroleum jelly, and then I've got two adhesives here, mainly because this one is actually quite expensive, so if you can't get Telesis 5, you can definitely use Prosaide. And then the final thing you'll need is just some form of medical sheet, and if you don't have this, you can use paper towel or something similar at home. But what you want to be able to do is poke a hole through the middle of it so we can hide the index finger, just to give the illusion that what we're creating on top is actually the real thing, and then we'll be hiding the index finger underneath, and that's it. So the first thing you want to do is have a look at some anatomical reference images, in particular the index finger and what happens just underneath the surface of the skin. And in this description here it says that there's a fibrous sheath around the outside, so that's like a casing that encloses the tendon and the bone inside the finger. So that's what we want to start sculpting first of all. So what you want to do to start is just grab the white modeling wax, and you want to grab a piece that's roughly about the same size as your finger, maybe about 2/3. And then what we want to do is actually start by sculpting roughly the outline of the bone, and then we'll be filling in some of the details in between to give the illusion that the sheath is wrapped around the outside of the bone. So I have the basic bone shape here, and as you can see, I put a little bit of a bend in it, and what you want to try and do is maintain that as you're creating this piece. The other thing you can also do too is before you bend it, you can undo a paper clip and actually thread it through the middle just to kind of keep these pieces together. I find that this consistency of modeling wax for me is actually pretty sturdy and generally keeps its shape. But the idea being is once you place this bent down on the finger like that, we can hide the real finger underneath and then slightly curl up the rest of the fingers so this kind of fits in with the rest. So I'm quite happy with this shape. It's obviously very rough, but we're still going to fill out more detail around the outside here just to give the illusion that you are looking at the sheath that's surrounding the tendon and the bone. So grab a bit of the pink modeling wax, and then you can begin filling in the joints in between. I'm pretty happy with this piece now. As you can see, I've taken advantage of the translucency of this modeling wax, and I've put little bits of white over the top of red just to give the illusion that there's actually something else going on underneath. So as the anatomical diagram says, there is a sheath around the outside containing everything, so I wanted to try and recreate that illusion. I'm just going to go back in now with a little bit of dark red modeling wax and just highlight and accentuate some of these pieces, and I think that's it. I'm just grabbing my sculpting tool now, and I'm going in and putting a couple of striations or some lines through this sheath just to make sure that it doesn't sit completely flat, and add a little bit of texture in there. And once you're happy with the general shape, I then go in and grab some of the fibers from this yarn and just pull them apart. And keep going until you've got some super fine ones like that. And you can even pull this apart even more again. And then grab just a small piece like this and twist it back up again so it goes to a fine point. And then you can start laying these down on top of the piece to simulate veins and capillaries. So I've just gone and added some red yarn around the outside just to kind of simulate veins and capillaries, and these might not be absolutely anatomically correct, but I think they add to the effect. And what I do now is just go back over all of this with the clear sealer just to add a bit of a glossy sheen to it, and it also helps reinforce this piece, so it'll put a kind of hardened layer around the outside, take away the tackiness and make it easier to glue down, and also keep these pieces together because you've technically made this up of several pieces and you don't want it to come apart. So I just grabbed the Krylon clear sealer, and if you don't have this you can use clear nail polish, and then just give it a quick coat all the way around the outside. So the clear coat has now dried on this, and the final step for this little prosthetic is to go in and just add a little bit more colour in with some skin illustrator. And I don't want to do too much because it will be covered in blood at the end as well. So just grab a little bit of the rose adjuster colour here, and we just want to go over certain areas with little washes just to accentuate some of the detail in this finger here. So I like to go over the little cracks and the little cuts and grooves that I sculpted in previously just to help define those a bit more. And we can put this aside to dry a little bit more. So just before we start assembling everything, what I do is I grab the medical sheet. I've just cut a hole in this previously, but what you want to do is make sure that your finger can slide through this easily. So I've just put a little slit in there, and just slide your index finger in and work out exactly where you want to position it and how much of it you need to hide. And then just grab this white liner pencil and mark out exactly where the sheet appears on your finger. And in order to be able to slide this back on again, or slide this medical sheet back on again, once we've created the makeup and glued the finger down, we want to make sure that we don't go past that line, as in we don't want to stick anything out past here, otherwise we won't be able to stick the sheet down. It doesn't have to be precise, but just roughly. So what I need to do now is go in with something sharp and just cut it off on an angle so it looks like it's coming out from the hand, but I want to cut it from the back here. So what I'm actually wanting to do is cut a diagonal line from this knuckle joint all the way to the front, so that when we stick this down it will be raised up. It'll look like the finger is actually sticking up from the hand. The best thing I find in order to be able to cut this, especially the modeling wax, is just a spatula or something long and flat like this, and I put a couple of layers of Vaseline over the top. And you want to be pretty quick with this, as fast as you can. And what you might find is some of these little bits of yarn here might not actually cut through, so you'll have to go back in and cut those with scissors. But just lay it down on its side and cut that angle. So again, we want to do it from the underside, the knuckle or the first knuckle, back to the front again like this. And then just grab some scissors and cut any of those bits of yarn that are sticking up. So this now has a flat back that I can actually glue down onto my finger here like this. And then we'll be creating the skin and tissue that wraps around the outside to give the illusion that the skin has actually been pulled off the finger. So what we want to do now is just temporarily put that prosthetic finger piece in place. I've got a tiny little bit of adhesive on here now just to hold it in place, but I don't want to put too much down that it sticks there for good. And then I just want to mark out the outer edges of where that finger will be stuck down, just so that I can go back in now and recreate the edges around the outside. So I grab a bit of my spirit gum and then just dab that around the outside now. Once that spirit gum becomes tacky, you can just roll up some nose and scar wax and surround that area that you've marked out. Apologies for the noise in the background, there's actually a rainstorm happening as I'm recording this now. So what we're doing is we're just building up a fake skin layer, and you want to leave that inside area here clear so that you can stick that finger piece back down again. So once you're happy with the wax placement, because this is a flayed finger, you want to grab some of these pieces that you put down and actually fold them back over themselves, so it does look like the skin has been peeled back and off the finger. To help the prosthetic stick down, I get a Q-tip and just go in there and mop up any of the excess petroleum jelly and wax, and then grab your good adhesive. So I've got the Telesis 5 here, and you can go in and stick that prosthetic finger piece down now. And you want to grab this prosthetic piece, and you also want to put a layer of adhesive on the back of it as well, just to ensure that it stays down or sticks down well. Then I just slide that piece in like that and stick it down. You can actually go in and just clean up some of these areas here with a little bit of petroleum jelly on a brush. Then the final step now is just to go in around the outside here and create a little bit of meaty texture. There's actually not too much going on underneath the skin in the finger, as in there are no muscles. There's a little bit of fatty tissue, so that's what the pads are filled up with here, just in the fingers. So I go back in just with tiny little bits of nose and scar wax and slot those into the holes, and then we'll go back in and texture and color that later on. Grab the petroleum jelly and the sculpting tool, and then just gently push that scar wax into the grooves, and you want to add a little bit of texture in there too. That helps with the effect. If you wanted to now, you could also go in and add a little bit more nose and scar wax just in the center here. If you wanted to extend that cut down into the hand a little bit more, what I might do is just go in and paint this and see how it looks. And if I'm not happy with the effect, I might add a little bit more wax just down here and continue the cut in the skin, just look like it is more flayed. So grab the Skin Illustrator palette again, and then we just want to use light washes of the rose adjuster again. So I might just go in and grab what I already have in the lid here, mix it with a bit of alcohol, and then just dab lightly over the top of that textured scar wax that you've just put in. And to add to the depth of this wound, I'll go back in and just add some darker rose adjuster in around the edges here. Then once you're happy with the inside color of the wound, you can add a little bit of blood color just to the edges of the skin to make it look like it's cut open. What I'm going to do to add to the effect now is, I think I might extend the cut in the skin just to come out down onto the palm a little bit more, just to exaggerate that. I'm pretty happy with that cut now. So the only thing left to do is to go in and just fill in a little bit more red detail on the inside and then color match the nose and scar wax back to my actual skin color, and then that should be it. And once you're happy with the color matching, you can slide your finger inside the medical sheet, and then that's it. And then once you've got your finger into position, one thing you can do to add to this illusion, which Freakmo actually did on her degloved finger tutorial, is if you get a gelatin replica of your finger, but just pour it around inside the mold, or pour some gelatin inside a finger mold and leave the inside hollow, you can actually have that kind of resting out to one side to give the illusion that the skin is kind of hanging off to the side. Another thing you can do is actually grab a large piece of nose and scar wax and just have it continue down onto the medical cloth here to make it look like the skin is actually flayed and draped out. So the only thing left to do now is to grab some fake blood and just add it around the wound. What I like to do normally with fake blood is just put it down in bigger clumps and just let it sit there for a little while, and go back in once it's dried off a tad and just mop it up with a wet tissue. And the other thing too is, don't forget to put some blood down on top of the medical sheet or whatever it is you're using here, just to make it look like blood has run off from the finger. So I'll just let that sit there for a while now and dry, and then go back in with a wet or damp tissue and mop up some of the blood. So this is it here. This is the flayed finger injury. Next time I would probably thicken up that sculpt a little bit more to be kind of closer to the thickness of the finger. It's probably a little bit too thin. This could also be a degloved finger as well. What I would probably do if I recreated this is I would add a little bit more skin to the back here. I'd probably even make a gelatin piece and just have the skin kind of flayed out, resting underneath this prosthetic. So that's the final look there of the flayed finger. If you wanted to add to it a little bit more, you could create just a flat gelatin piece about the size of the skin on the finger and have it resting out the back here, so it does literally look like the skin is flayed and it's still sitting there on top of the operating table. But I just wanted to give you an idea of how to sculpt and create this piece and then hold it in place. This could also be called a degloved finger as well, technically. Thanks for watching.